Today is Monday, October 27th, 2025. This is First Alert Weather Plus. Meteorologist Nicholas Snyder here. Lots to talk about this week on this episode of First Alert Weather Plus, as we got a couple of impactful systems that will be moving their way on into the area. So let's get right into it. The big thing, of course, the late week storm coming at a very inopportune time for Halloween trick-or-treaters. What are the impacts we could see from that? We're going to talk about that. We are tracking Hurricane Melissa. Now, the good news is the United States won't be seeing direct impacts from this, but other locations are. And the long-term forecast, what can we expect from that long-term forecast? The all-important long-term forecast, especially this time of year, because things are getting a little bit interesting in terms of the changing of the seasons and everything like that. So we're going to get you a look at that as well. First of all, we got to talk about all the impactful systems that are headed on in. We got this area of low pressure right here that's centered right along the tri-border of Tennessee, or the quad border, rather, of Tennessee, Arkansas, and Missouri, and Kentucky even. And this is driving the development of a few rain showers over portions of Kentucky that we will see a little bit later on tonight. Meanwhile, this system back to the west is going to reinforce that system we were just talking about and provide the region with maybe a little bit more of some impactful weather as we head later on down the line. And here's the all-important Hurricane Melissa and what we're tracking there. Let's go back to the systems we're watching right now, though. A couple of things I want you to notice. Lots of the cold air is back to the west here. This is the initial disturbance that's currently moving through southern Idaho, northern Utah, places like that. It's going to rapidly begin working its way further and further to the east, thanks to a very fast movement of winds here. It's going to really carry back to the east and eventually set up shop by tomorrow over portions of the Great Plains. You're talking the Texoma region, western Kansas, the high plains of western Kansas, eastern Colorado, much of the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma too. That's where that low pressure is initially going to set up. It's going to reinforce what we're seeing from this system right here and cause even stronger rain, stronger wind to develop on in. This swirl, meanwhile, again, right here, that's over portions of the central lowlands, over the Mississippi Valley, the lower Ohio Valley. It's going to continue to track our way. That's in a battleground between a high pressure to the north, which is set up right here, bringing in some dry conditions to much of southern Ohio, versus the rainy conditions that we're seeing over portions of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia. So there will be a battleground. We're not going to initially see any widespread rain over the area, but the rain eventually does work on in once we head, let's say, a little bit later on into the night tonight. Here's the low pressure being developed out of all of this. Warm front sitting to the south, moisture coming in from the Gulf, lifting up and over the warm front to produce that precipitation. And again, right now we're seeing most of the precipitation into parts of Tennessee, into parts of southern Kentucky here as well. Parts of our viewing area as early as this afternoon have already seen a few showers. And again, later tonight we could see those showers begin tracking into the region. Now, I want to show you again what this system's going to do. Notice how it really gathered some strength, gathered some wind, kind of merged together with the system that is overhead. The diverging air is really going to deepen an area of low pressure that is overhead. Remember, low pressure is like diverging air. There's a void of air. It has to fill the void with rising motion. Hence, we get rain. Hence, we get all the interesting weather that comes with low pressures right there. Because it gets strong, because we're dealing with stronger divergence, we're going to drive in some cooler temperatures, and we're driving warmer temperatures out ahead of that, which in turn creates a positive feedback loop, generating some stronger winds aloft and eventually stronger divergence all over again, and eventually, of course, driving another area of low pressure that will be strong over the region. So we're talking about, again, very strong system that will only get stronger and bring in some very chilly air. Very strong low pressure is also associated with cool air. We're talking likely the coolest highs of this season so far, of 2025. And what that could do is really allow us to see some interesting conditions in terms of the precipitation type. We could see our first snowflakes of the season. You can just see this cold core of air wrapping in behind this system, those darker blues right there, when that merges with the heavy rain. Remember, we saw this last week, but we had such dry conditions that it didn't matter. But now, when this is merging with potential precipitation, what we're going to get is the potential of a few flurries in the higher elevation terrain east of the Charleston area, even east of Summersville out toward Richwood, having the best bet at seeing that. So the area of low pressure, of course, does bring precipitation, and we desperately need that rain. We have those drought conditions continuing over much of the West Virginia mountains here. Cool highs, the coolest of 2025 fall so far, only into the upper 50s and lower 60s here. And yes, the first flakes, like I was mentioning earlier, definitely a possibility. Here's the moisture associated with this system, by the way. It's going to be pulled in from the Gulf and from the Atlantic. You notice this little tongue of moisture right in here coming up and trying to slope over the mountains once we head into Wednesday night. Now, what's really going to drive in the forcing for this is a tongue of warm air that will surge in behind this moisture right in here. We call that a trowel, or a trough of warm air aloft. You saw that little S shape to the temperature contours in that last graphic I showed you, and that will have a big impact on who sees precipitation and who doesn't see precipitation once we head into Thursday. So let's track that precipitation for you. Again, this will start you tonight. This is the warm front, the impacts from the warm front. Notice the dry air over southern Ohio just really kind of fading that rain away as it gets, or at least tries to get, north of the I-64 corridor. Not going to see a whole lot of that rain reaching north of the I-64 corridor. And that reinforcing shot of moisture coming in on Wednesday and energy, thanks to that new developing area of low pressure working in. This is the European model, by the way. Here is that trough of warm air aloft I mentioned. You see kind of an S shape here where the heaviest rain is going to be. Where that heaviest rain sets up is where that trough of warm air aloft is, and that's going to have a big impact on, again, who sees that precipitation and who doesn't, and whether or not we do see our first flakes of the season. I think Friday, definitely a possibility that areas like Richwood could see their first flakes of the season, where you see these pink areas right here east of Corridor L up toward Randolph County into Elkins. That general area definitely could see a possibility of most of that precipitation becoming some snow. I don't think accumulations are going to be a huge deal, but certainly worth watching. As far as rain accumulations go, I want you to remember this is over a extended period of time. This goes all the way from tonight through Thursday at 10 p.m. So what this means is, yes, we do have the possibility of seeing 2.5 inches of rain over the widespread area, but I don't think flooding is going to be an issue because this is over a 4-day span. So flooding, not really a concern here, but winds could definitely be a concern. We'll talk about that in a second. And yes, first flakes. Again, Richwood, 1/10 of an inch of snow. Grassy coating of accumulation definitely can't be ruled out there. Down into the Snowshoe area, Pocahontas County. Point that out for you right here. Snowshoe right in here. Could even see up to an inch of snow out of this. Not a huge deal by any means, but certainly pretty early to be seeing a lot of some of that activity that could be working its way on in. Meteorologist Hannah Hayes has more on what we could be expecting as far as why we're seeing some of the higher elevation snow versus the low elevations seeing that rain, and why it gets so much colder up in those higher elevations.
Well, winter is just around the corner, and with snowfall making its way back into the forecast before we know it. But more times than not, we'll forecast a snowfall that's only for the mountains and the higher elevations like Summersville, Snowshoe, and Beckley. Now, due to their higher elevations, they're the ones who will get snow before the rest of us in the lowlands because of a couple of different factors. As snow falls from the clouds, the temperatures in the upper atmosphere is much colder than what we see at temperature at ground level. But as the snow continues to fall, it can change from snow to rain, even to freezing rain or sleet, depending on the cold or warm air that the precipitation falls through as it makes its way towards the ground. So in the higher elevations, like the mountains, they're more likely to get that snow before the lowlands because of those colder temperatures, while the lowlands could see rain because of the warmer temperatures closer to the ground. This is very common in the wintertime, especially when something called orographic lift is involved. Orographic lifting is responsible for many of the big snowfalls in the mountains, and orographic lift is when warm, moist air hits a mountain and rises as it is forced up. As the air mass rises very quickly, it cools off, which raises the humidity level as high as 100%. When the moisture from the air mass condenses, that makes clouds, which can produce snow under the right conditions. This is how a majority of the snowfall happens in the higher elevations, and another reason why they may see snow, but the lowlands get rain or no precipitation at all. So as winter approaches, we should have plenty of snow in the forecast, but don't be surprised to hear us call for snow in the mountains and rain for the rest of us.
Thank you, Hannah. And on top of this, again, the winds could be an issue. With that strong area of low pressure, you get a tight pressure gradient, and so winds could be gusty. Thursday, even into Friday, yes, trick-or-treating, bad timing for that, but certainly could be a possibility with gusts up to 20, 25 miles an hour. That's something we're keeping a very close eye on for Thursday, as well as Friday. Now, you're not going to see any yard objects blown around or anything like that, but it's winds that you're definitely going to notice, and it's not going to be the warmest feeling out there either. So, yeah, you could be dealing with some cold, rainy, and just ugly trick-or-treating, especially on Thursday if you do have trick-or-treating plans for your day on Thursday. Now let's shift gears here. I did a little explainer on Hurricane Melissa and all the impacts we could see on that, and what we could expect to be seeing as this storm system and Melissa interact. One storm making big headlines is Hurricane Melissa, currently in the Gulf just to the southwest of Jamaica, and this is going to make a beeline right for the shore of Jamaica. Currently a Category 5 hurricane as of Monday morning, the 11 a.m. advisory right here. Winds sustained of 165 miles an hour, winds gusting up to 200 miles an hour, and a very low pressure at 908 millibars. We're going to talk about some of the factors that impact the track and the timing of the system, starting with, of course, what hurricanes love: warm ocean temperatures. Warmer temperatures equal lower surface pressure and more juice for those storms to kind of fire up and feed into that hurricane. If you look at our colors right here, a very, very warm Caribbean and Gulf right now. Temperatures above 85 degrees in those sea surface temperature areas, and that's what we're concerned about. That's why we've seen such rapid intensification of this storm as it's beginning to work its way again toward the Jamaican shoreline right here. Another thing hurricanes love: weak winds aloft. It keeps storms clustered and the dry air out of the system. Dry air likes to tear apart hurricanes. Let's talk about what we're tracking and how this could impact the track of the storm. Here's the storm itself showing up on our one model right here. This is the European model. You'll notice this one little system back to the west. This is the system that we've been talking about coming into our area a little bit later on this week. Watch what this system does to the hurricane. It's actually going to steer it away from the United States and keep it away from us, and it's going to weaken the system in the process of that. Here's the hurricane right now. Notice the system working its way closer, pushing it further out to the Atlantic, and again, with those stronger winds high up in the sky, it's weakening the hurricane as well. Continues to work its way north, and eventually the two systems come together and really combine forces as Melissa becomes post-tropical once it heads toward the Bermuda area, interacting with our system that's coming Thursday and Friday. So with those stronger winds aloft, the hurricane's going to be weakened, and those stronger winds from the west are going to push Melissa far away from the eastern shore of the United States, making it a non-impact for the United States. But again, Jamaica seeing the big impacts with this. Of course, it likes uniform surfaces as well. That's why the hurricanes love the sea, not so much the mountains. Less disruption in the wind as a result of that. So again, let's track the hurricane. Still a Category 5 storm. I mentioned all the stats with this. And again, with that system pushing closer, it's going to start to make that right turn here. Eventually, by tomorrow, we're talking about the storm beginning to make landfall toward the Jamaican shore, pushing over toward Cuba and the Hispaniola area once we head toward, let's say 7 a.m. on Tuesday. It's a quick landfall over there in Jamaica, and then beyond the Caribbean into the Atlantic Ocean by Wednesday evening and Wednesday night. Notice how much it weakens too to a Category 2 storm thanks to those stronger winds from our system working its way closer. And then eventually post-tropical by Saturday 9:30 a.m. well away from the eastern shore of the United States, not impacting us. But again, if you're headed down toward Jamaica or know anyone vacationing right now in Jamaica, could be some big impacts for that general area. Shifting gears to the long term now, Tony has more information on forecasting for the long term and how a snowpack further to the west, even as far as Alaska or on the other side of the globe in Russia, could have an impact on our weather locally.
And for this latest version of Weather Extra Plus, I wanted to give you a look at some of the weather patterns across the globe because, you know, it's pretty soon time to unveil the winter forecast. And of course, as meteorologists, we're interested in the Pacific Ocean. It's the biggest ocean on the planet Earth. And it also houses a couple of jet streams. We can see one coming from Asia, heading toward the west coast of the United States. Again, I'm taping on Friday. Then the so-called subtropical jet stream that sometimes can house that El Nino effect that we like to talk about. So whether the temperature in the ocean is warmer or colder than normal, whether it's the chills or hot flashes, we want to know about that in meteorology. It was last week we talked about the North Pacific with remnants of typhoons affecting our weather as far as sending chilly air our way. And we also like to look at, of course, the current snowpack. Here we are heading toward the end of October and the 1st of November, and there is not a lot of snow on the ground across much of Canada until you get up to the Northwest Territories. I mention that because this is lame for late October. Once you put snow on the ground, you refrigerate the air, and when those refrigerated air masses come into the United States and head into our area, they often have cold blusters, and those cold blusters can produce snow showers in the lee of the lakes. But from the Northwest Territories across the Arctic Ocean over towards Siberia, over into Eurasia, there's a building snowpack, as there should be at this time of the year. Again, that takes refrigerated air from Eurasia, from Siberia. It goes across the Arctic Ocean into the northern part of North America, and ultimately that's where we can tap some cold air for snowstorms and for snow squalls during the winter season. So the current snow cover in Canada is lame. That's usually a contra-indicator for a cold winter. In this case, we've got plenty of snow from the Northwest Territories and over to Siberia. And if you're a snow lover, you want to see that snowpack develop into southern Canada and the northern United States as we head toward Thanksgiving. The so-called Siberian influence is easy to understand because if you have snow on the ground and deep snow, the air is refrigerated, it's cold. And those cold air masses can be injected into the United States, especially as we saw last week when the remnant storms in the Northwest Pacific send warm air into Alaska, for example. That can act to dislodge cold air masses into our part of the world. Now, I do want to point out that the consensus between the European and the American model are putting down the first heavy accumulations of snow in the lee of the lakes, the so-called snow guns coming off the Great Lakes, the lake effect snows, as we head into the first 10 days in November. In other words, heading toward Veterans Day, we'll start seeing some snow squalls and accumulating snows, whether it be from Buffalo or up toward the UP of Michigan. And naturally, it's about time to start building a snowpack out in the Rocky Mountains, the Sierra and the Cascades out west. And the European and the American model are on board with that. And even the first coating of snow likely in the next couple of weeks along the Canadian-US border. And more the computers are suggesting that we get into a colder than normal weather pattern in early November here locally, and that means we're likely to see the first accumulations of snow at Snowshoe and Canaan Valley above the 3,000 foot level over the next couple of weeks. I normally expect our first snowflake to occur around Veterans Day. A pattern like this that puts out a couple snowfalls into the highest country of West Virginia is likely to produce, on schedule, our first wet snowflake of the season, even in the Ohio Big Sandy and Kanawha Valley, before Veterans Day. And so if you're a snow lover, let's keep our eyes on that Siberian snowpack to spread not only to the Northwest Territories of Canada, but all the way into the southern part of Canada and the northern United States. And maybe, just maybe, that might be an indication of a harsh winter ahead. Too soon to tell on that, but it's not too soon to relate the information as we see it come in here at WSAZ.com and, of course, at First Alert Plus.
Thank you, Tony. Always important information there. And you see a lot of the colder air has worked its way into parts of Siberia, into parts of Alaska here. Now, we're still dealing with that strong positive Arctic oscillation, that strong polar vortex up here where all the cold air is bottled up. Even up into Alaska, we're seeing that positive Eastern Pacific oscillation where things are cold up there, and the North Atlantic oscillation still very strongly positive as well. But as we move forward here, we're going to notice a breakdown, at least start to notice a breakdown of that polar vortex. You see a little bit of this cooler air moving inland into Russia, whereas Alaska gets a nudge of warmer air, and the west coast of the United States dealing with very, very warm air. Meanwhile, we're dealing with cool air of our own, and that North Atlantic oscillation starting to become a bit more negative as well. As we move this a little bit further, you'll notice again that Arctic oscillation really breaking down, and the polar vortex becoming stronger over much of Russia, the Siberia area that Tony was mentioning here. That cold air core now pushed well into parts of Europe and parts of Western Asia and things of that nature, whereas we're going to get our own shot of cold air once we head into the beginning of next week. Start of November could be very, very cold for us, guys. Also, some warmer air trying to nudge up into Alaska, but that Pacific North American oscillation remains negative. That Pacific North American oscillation is the warm air on the west coast here. The North Atlantic oscillation is a positive, though, so it's not going to get exceptionally cold over the area. For that to happen, we'd need this branch of the polar vortex to filter its way on down here. So it's going to be cold. Yes, colder than normal for sure, but definitely not exceptionally cold where we're talking about maybe 30s or 20s for highs. As we continue on down the line here, though, that Arctic oscillation regains its strength. That cold air goes back into Alaska, so the Eastern Pacific oscillation now is once again positive. The North Atlantic oscillation's back to being a positive phase, and the Arctic oscillation positive as well. And we see a warmer air nudging back into our area. A closer look at this, showing this activity again. We get a breakdown of that polar vortex just a little bit to see some cooler air later this week and into next week before that warm air does want to begin to filter back into the area and drive some warmer temperatures toward the middle and end of next week. So, Climate Prediction Center earlier on next week indicating that, yes, we will be below normal as far as those temperatures are concerned. And again, this is forecasted days 6 to 10, so this would include Sunday through about Wednesday of next week. Precipitation-wise, near average. Again, we're going to see a lot of precipitation before that as that system works on through toward Thursday, toward Wednesday, but after that, a bit of a drier period will be set to move on in. Super 7-day time. Let's take my picture off of here so you can more clearly see that. And you'll get a better idea of what we're talking about here, at least in the short and midterm here. Let's talk about Thursday, the all-important Thursday forecast. We mentioned the chance of snow. Yes, the pink up here indicating the potential of areas like Richwood, up toward Snowshoe, up toward Elkins, seeing a few snowflakes trying to mix in with that rain that we do see on Thursday. On top of that, again, breezy conditions up to 20-25 miles an hour on both Thursday and Friday. The precipitation on Friday mainly into the mountains, so if you're worried about trick-or-treat in the lowlands, you should be dry, but it's still going to be on the cooler side, and it's still going to be on the breezier side for sure. But trick-or-treaters going out on Friday evening, yes, we're talking about temps in the 40s because of those clearer conditions. Now, the winds will try to help us to stay on the warmer side, but calmer winds once that sun goes down. And expect lower and middle 40s for much of trick-or-treat. So if you're trick-or-treating on Friday, bundle up. And if you're trick-or-treating on Thursday, you're going to need those umbrellas for sure. Time change by next week. Personally, my favorite time of year because we get an extra hour of sleep, and that's definitely on the way. Certainly things we all like here. Although those sunsets are going to be a little bit earlier, so be prepared for that. This is First Alert Weather Plus. We give you the first alert on everything you need to know in terms of that weather and give you updates on weather, give you the in-depth info on the weather here as well. We stream every day Monday, 6:45 p.m. on WSAZ.com or any of the WSAZ digital apps on your smart TVs. You can also find us on YouTube. First Alert Weather Plus, WSAZ First Alert Weather Plus, I should say. Be sure to like and subscribe to that. Find us on Facebook as well. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Snyder on Facebook. Hannah is meteorologist Hannah Hayes on Facebook. Dylan is Dylan Go Day Weather on Facebook. And Tony is Tony Cavalier on Facebook. In the meantime, make it a great Monday, everybody.